Learn to sail with me in this step-by-step beginner sailing guide. If you're learning to sail a dinghy like these ones here, or a big yacht, a lot of the concepts are going to be the same. I'll keep it simple, cut out the jargon, with clear explanations, demonstrations in the boat, and some diagrams to help you understand what's going on. So first of all, there's two main controls that we're going to be using. One is the tiller and this extension to the tiller. Now this controls the steering, so as I push this and pull it, you can see the boat's changing direction. The other is a sheet. So the sheet is a posh word for a rope that controls a sail. So this is the main sheet because it controls the main sail. If you have a smaller sail at the front called a jib, then the rope that controls that sail is called a jib sheet. So the sheet controls the sail, you see, it pulls it in and out compared to the boat. When we need to pull the sail in, because there's so much sheet, we want to be able to use both hands. So see here, by having your hands together, that enables us to do that. So hold your hands together as if you're boxing or something, and hold the tiller like a microphone. And this is why the tiller extension here is so long. So when you first learn to sail, you might think it's getting in the way. See, I'm actually holding the very end of it here, so I couldn't move any further forwards or lean out much more. If it was shorter, I'd be restricted to how far I can move about in the boat. If a sail's flapping like this, there's no power in it. The wind is just flowing evenly down both sides of the sail. So to get moving, we need to pull the sheet and pull the sail in until the flapping stops, and then no further. Because what we're trying to do with a sail is deflect the wind off its course. So the wind is coming from behind me down that way. So by bending the wind, we're making more pressure on the inside of the sail, and it'll want to push the boat at 90 degrees to the boom. So a lot of the time, the power from the sail is trying to push the boat sideways. So that's why we have a board in the middle of a boat, or a keel, which is going to stop that sideways element of drift and allow the boat to move forwards. But that is also why the boat will try and lean over. So on a dinghy, we sit on the side to balance that leaning force or heeling force with our weight. On a keel boat or a yacht, it's the big weight on the bottom of the keel that's holding the boat from tipping over. You need to know where the wind is coming from, so get yourself a wind indicator. A little hook like this one here is great for single-hander dinghies that don't have a jib, or a masthead burgee like this is great for larger boats. I'll put some links in a video description. When you first learn to sail, you'll probably start by sailing across the wind on what's called a beam reach. This is when the wind is hitting the boat at 90 degrees to the side. So at this angle, it's as easy to sail one way across the wind as it is to sail back to where you started from. So because the sail is always going to set on the downwind side, when we turn around to come the other way, the sail needs to swap sides and we need to swap sides. So this is tacking or gybing. Now, tacking is a process of turning the boat around through the wind, but the bow points into the wind in the process. Gybing is when we turn around and the wind swaps sides, but we turn the back of the boat through the wind.
So let's consolidate what we've done so far. For your first sail, you should sail at 90 degrees to the wind, so the wind is hitting the boat sideways on. Sit on the side to balance the boat, holding your tiller extension and the main sheet in front of you with your hands close together. Use the tiller to steer, making small adjustments to sail a straight course. Pull the sail in just enough to stop it flapping. At some point you'll need to tack to go back the other way. Push the tiller to the sail to turn into the wind, moving across the boat to keep it flat through the turn. Watch your head on the boom and straighten the tiller when the sail is going out on a new side. Move over to the new side to keep the boat flat, and look where you're going to keep the boat straight. Tacking the boat around is harder than sailing in a straight line. So aim to sail for long enough in one direction that you're getting settled in the boat and getting a good feel for the steering. It's generally best to start with tacking instead of gybing, because it's a slower manoeuvre, easier to learn, and you've more room for error. There's no need to rush the tacks either. The harder you push the tiller, the faster the boat will turn and the less time you'll have to cross the boat. If you turn too slowly, the boat will slow down and stop because it's lost power by pointing into the wind. You need to get the boat through the turn before it loses momentum, but not so fast that you're rushing in the boat too much. Once you've got the hang of sailing across the wind, we can start to sail at different angles to the wind and learn more about where we can and can't sail the boat.
So with the sheets, we're trying to adjust the sail so that we stop that flapping and then pull it in no further. So when we sail closer towards the wind, if I turn the boat closer into the wind, so the wind's now coming from further forward, it started flapping again because we've effectively eased the sail out. So we pull the sheet in again, and so on. As we turn closer to the wind, the sail comes in tighter and tighter. When we get to a point we can't pull the sail in anymore, that's as close as we can possibly sail to the wind. And you'll see now the boat's trying to lean over a lot more because most of the power is going very sideways because the boom's so tight. So we need to balance the boat harder by leaning out more, and we can use the foot straps in the bottom of the boat to get our weight further out. This is as close as we can sail to the wind, and this is called a close haul, which is about 45 degrees away from the wind. If we go further and point directly at the wind, the sail is going to flap down the middle of the boat, and no matter how tight we pull the sail, we physically cannot get any power. So we're now stuck head to wind, but this whole area that we can't sail into is called the no-go zone. So whenever we're pointing at the no-go zone, we're not going to go anywhere. We need to turn the boat out of the no-go zone to be able to get power in the sail again, and then we can set off.
Imagine we're in the middle of this circle and we can go outwards. The wind is coming down the screen. The points of sail are the different names we use so we know what angle the boat is sailing at compared to the wind. We started by sailing back and forth across the wind, which is called a beam reach. I've also just shown you that the closest you can sail to the wind is a close haul. If we turn completely into the wind, we say we are head to wind, or stuck in irons. The no-go zone is the area we cannot sail into, which is about 45 degrees either side of the wind. We cannot get power in the sail, so the boat will slow down and stop. Before this happens, we need to turn the boat out of the wind so we don't get stuck. So, if we want to sail towards the wind, we have to sail a series of close-hauled courses to zigzag towards the wind, tacking from one close haul to the other.
So on a close haul, we've got the sail in about as tight as it can go, and I'm looking at the sail. Okay, so if we turn into the wind more and more, when it starts flapping more, just at the mast here like this, that's when we're getting too close to a no-go zone. So we'll turn a little bit away from the wind and we'll feel the power come back into the boat. The risk is if we keep turning too far away from the wind, because the sail doesn't start flapping, it's not as obvious that there's a problem. So it might just be we're sailing much further than we need to if we're not on that nice 45 degrees to the wind. So the wind's slightly up and down, so I'm sitting out, I've got my feet in the foot straps here, so I'm just trying to keep the boat as flat as possible.
To summarise, we need to have the sail in tight, sit out to keep the boat flat, and we're steering to stay on the edge of a no-go zone, close to the wind but without losing power. We need to tack so that the zigzags average out to the direction we would actually go if we were able to. When you're learning to sail, you should really focus on watching for the sail flapping and feeling the power in the boat to find the edge of a no-go zone to sail on a good close-hauled course.
So we've come quite far upwind now, so we want to go back downwind. So what we want to do is make sure we release the sail out really quite nice and far. So we're going to sail on a broad reach, so that's when the wind's going to be about 45 degrees behind us, and this is normally the fastest point of sail because we're still trying to keep the air flowing across the sail from the mast to the edge of the sail, so not just pushing the sail if it's directly behind us.
On a broad reach, the wind is 45 degrees behind the boat. Because the power from a sail is at right angles to the boom, the sail needs to be out as far as possible to make sure it's pushing the boat forwards most efficiently and not sideways. We don't want the boom to go forwards of 90 degrees because the power will be less forwards and the boat will become unstable. If we point the boat directly downwind, we are on a run. The wind is directly behind the boat and the sail still needs to be fully out. The airflow changes here though. It no longer flows across the sail, it simply hits the inside of the sail and can't get through it. This gives us more pressure on the inside of a sail than there is in front of a sail, so it still creates power at 90 degrees to the boom. I explain all about these airflows and how the sail works in more detail in my video about how to trim a sail properly.
So now we're sailing downwind. This is when we normally would jibe. So if we start sailing that way, the wind is going to come from about here all the way around the back of the boat and start hitting us from over there. So the sail's going to swap sides to be over here, but the back of the boat's still facing the wind throughout. So I'm just going to start turning. This time I'm turning a tilt away from the sail. I'm pulling the sail in a tiny bit just to make the wind catch the sail a bit sooner. And can you see the difference there? The sail comes across the boat much more quickly.
Just to clarify, when we have turned the back of the boat through the wind, the sail will not come over if the wind is still hitting the inside of the sail, as it is here. We need to keep turning the boat or pull the sail over to make the sail swap sides.
Just make sure the sail is nice and far out when we've got the wind behind us. So actually it's behind us about 45 degrees-ish, and the wind is flowing nicely around the sail still. If we pull the sail too tight downwind, then the wind's just going to hit the sail and not flow over it properly. So it's actually less powerful and it's a bit harder work. It's trying to make the boat lean over more and we'll be going more slowly. Notice as well, now the sail's out so far, I'm leaning into the boat much more because my weight is nearly kind of central because there's a lot less leaning force because the power from the boom is mainly pushing the boat forwards. If you've got this far, you must be enjoying it, so let me know by liking the video. Keep learning with my full online sailing course here, which goes into a lot more detail about a wide range of sailing skills. When you first learn to sail, you should go to an accredited school with qualified instructors and safety cover. Go on, watch the full course here.